is the area of a parallelogram if two adjacent next to each other sides measure 4 and 5, and an included, that means in between, an included angle measures 60 degrees. Remember, the diagonals divide parallelograms into triangles. So we can use our area of a triangle formula with trig because we have two sides next to each other and the angle in between. We have AB and C, sides A and B, and angle C in between. And since it's a multiple choice question, I'm just going to type everything into my calculator. 1/2. About 8.6. And I'm going to try out the answer choices. Oh, wait, I forgot. It's not that because that's one of the triangles. And we need the whole parallelogram, so we need to double it. So the answer over there, the 8.6602544038 needs to be doubled. So it's about 17. Still, it's not 5 radical 2. It's not 10 radical 2. That's not the same. Not 5 radical 3. It is 10 radical 3. C is the 90-degree angle. And that means this is 3 if you use Pythagorean theorem. Cosine of angle A is 4/5. Tangent of angle A, opposite over adjacent, that is 3/4. Sine of angle B from angle B, we have opposite over hypotenuse, that is 4/5. Tangent of angle B, opposite over adjacent, that should be 4/3. That's the one that's not true. Dilations create similar triangles. Similar triangles have congruent angles and proportional sides. Since the angles are the same and the sides are proportional, for congruent angles, the trig ratios will be the same since the sides are proportional. So let me redraw the two similar triangles before and after the dilation. And we're talking about angle A in all of them. Angle A corresponds to angle D, so we need to look at the ratios for all of them. So sine of angle A, opposite BC over AC. That's not there, that's not there. But we also have to look at angle D, because angle A and angle D are congruent. Similar triangles with proportional sides, so the sine for angle D is equivalent to the sine ratio for angle A. So from angle D, sine is opposite EC over hypotenuse DC, which is answer choice number 1. We need to use sine here. Oops. Divide both sides by sine of 18. What was that again? 8 divided by sine of 18. And that's about 25.8, 25.9, sorry. We have similar triangles. AR is 13. HR is 12. Since Y corresponds to R, and they're similar triangles, those angles are congruent. And since the triangles are similar, corresponding sides are proportional. So the ratio for angle R and angle Y are the same. So if I find for angle R, that will give me angle Y. So from angle R, we have adjacent and hypotenuse, that's cosine. And then I'm going to inverse it to find the angle, and the angle I find is going to be the same as angle Y. About 23 degrees. Sine and cosine are cofunctions, so they're equal when their angles add to 90 degrees. Plug in. The larger angle is 53 degrees. To use trig, you need right triangles. Angle theta is not in a right triangle. This triangle over here, not a right triangle. We have big right triangle that we could use to find this angle. And we have small right triangle that we could use to find this angle. And once we get those two angles, if we do x minus y, it will give us theta. So I'm going to do for the big right triangle first. From this angle, we have opposite, which is 72. And we have adjacent, which is 75, so that's tangent. To find the angle, if you take the inverse, that gives you the angle. Now for the small right triangle. For the small right triangle, we have opposite 12, and we have adjacent 75. So once again, that's tangent. To get the angle, we're going to use inverse. And now we can simply just subtract. I'm going to do that right in the calculator. And that's about 34.7 degrees. It says to the nearest tenth. Make sure you round according to the question. And show all your work. I know I didn't show the subtracting on my paper because I showed that here to you on the calculator. But on the Regents exam, if you make a mistake, they're going to take off a lot more points if you don't show your work. Because they can't say it's just a simple careless calculation error or a rounding error if they don't see the work. And then they'll take off a lot more points. Okay, so we're talking about the angle of depression that's outside the triangle. We're looking for how high the wall is. We are told that the point, here's my point, is 62 feet from the bottom of the wall, from the base of the wall. And angle of depression and angle of elevation are congruent. So opposite, adjacent, we need to use tangent. Cross multiply. It says to round to the nearest tenth. About 79.4. For this one, we need to find from A to B. But notice how A to B is not part of a right triangle. So we need to use our right triangles. We have a big right triangle. And we have a small right triangle. If we can find this side from the big right triangle and this side from the small right triangle and we subtract them, we get AB. So that's our plan. Now getting the angles is the tricky part. Angle of depression and angle of elevation are congruent alternate interior angles. Should we start with the 36-degree angle or the 25? We'll start with the 25. Just looking for my Z's here. It's alternate interior with this one. Let's see what the 36 forms a Z with. This one. And now I see that the 36-degree angle goes in the small triangle and the 25-degree angle goes in the big triangle. And 774 is already provided and the 1076. So let's do it. Let's start with the big right triangle to find x. So we have the hypotenuse and we're looking for adjacent. So adjacent over hypotenuse is cosine. Now for the small triangle, we're looking for adjacent. We have hypotenuse, cosine. And now we subtract. And just make sure you round according to the question. It says nearest foot. That means nearest whole number. And that's about 349 feet. You could write many things here. You could say sine and cosine are cofunctions, so they are equal when their angles are complementary, since 28 plus 62 equals to 90 degrees. Sine and cosine have the same value. Good explanation. I would still get only 1 point. You have to take a side. You have to actually answer the question. Both students are correct. If you don't state who you agree with, you lose a point. Now, not the only way you could go about it. You could also, instead of doing this is just the way I did it, but instead of doing this, you could have put your explanation about how the trig ratios are actually set up. So if you actually go over here to the triangle, right? 28, 90, this one's 62 to make 180 degrees. So sine of 28 from the 28 degree angle that's opposite over hypotenuse, that is actually HJ over 20. So that does check out. And if you go to the 62 degree angle, cosine that's adjacent HJ over hypotenuse 20, so that actually is HJ over 20 that checks out. So you could actually put in your explanation that based on each of the focus angles, both of the equations are correct because they have a correctly set up sine ratio and a correctly set up cosine ratio for those specific angles. So either explanation would be good. It doesn't matter. As long as you explained, you said both students are correct, so you said who you agreed with. And as long as you use the information from the question in your response can't be super vague. It can't be like cofunctions, right? Like one word. It can't be that. You have to use something from the actual problem in your response in order to get full credit.